Good morning, Gordon College, and greetings to our visitors who are here for Gordon Experience Day. I'm glad you're here. I get to go home with that. Yeah. 34 and a half years. You can't tell me God ain't good. Woo, yes! Glory! I'm about to have church up in here. This is really seriously stressful. Tom, I don't know how you do it, man. And as I was preparing this message, I realized I was really becoming anxious for a couple of things. One is I was worried that I wouldn't actually get the email from God about what I was supposed to say. I mean, it takes a while for light to dawn on Marblehead, and I was worried that it wouldn't come. But the other thing is I just didn't want to waste your time. I mean, how arrogant of me to think that I've got 20 minutes worth of something that you should pay attention to. But I need to realize it's not about me. It's about what God has given me to share with you. And so I pray that this does touch you. But, you think about it. How many sermons have you heard? According to stats, the average Christian college senior has heard 2,785 sermons and listened to about 5. That's documented. You can see the quote up there. Yeah, that's where you can find the... It's on the internet, man. It must be true. And so you think about it. Not only have you heard a lot of sermons and listened to a few, but how many do you remember? In the course of your life, how many sermons can you actually think of? Most of us probably are not going to get more than a handful. And part of that is because that sermons sometimes are just for that time. And that's cool. Or they're just added to the deposit of your sort of some knowledge and understanding of God. But every once in a while you hear a message that you will never forget. And several years ago, a friend of mine, Gideon Thompson, preached a message on Psalm 91 that seared into my spirit and has never left me. In fact, I actually wrote a song about it someday. Maybe I'll share that with you. But I remember him sharing, the first few chapters share about abiding in the shadow of the Almighty and resting in God and all kinds of wonderful promises. And Gideon said, how does that happen? Well, the answer is found in verse 14 and 15a. And he said there were 3 points. Of course, 3 points. And the first was that he loves me. The second, that he knows my name. And the third, that he calls on me. He or she. Those are the 3 prerequisites for experiencing the promises that are outlined in the beginning. So let me start with the whole thing about names. Names are kind of wild things, huh? Adam's first job was to name the animals. It's kind of a big deal. But in our culture, the meanings of our names aren't very important. In fact, generally speaking, your name doesn't tell me a lot about you unless it happens to be a Rockefeller or a Cardassian or something like that. But in other cultures, the meanings of names are really, really important. When Paulie and I were trying to name our soon-coming daughter 21 years ago, we decided to go all Neo-Africana. And so we bought a book of African names. We weren't going with Ashley or Megan. Sorry, it wasn't happening. And I remember there were some very interesting names in there. We settled on Nyasha, which is from the Shona people, means grace and mercy. But I remember there were other names that were really wild. One I remember, I don't know what the actual African name was, but the translation was, things were fine until you showed up. And there's a lot of problems with that name. First I'm thinking, how do you know? How does that even work? We didn't go with that one. But in Hebrew culture, and where these words were written, names were also important. And God, in his desire to help us understand who he was, gave himself more nicknames than a rapper. And he wants us to know who he is. Because the name isn't just a bunch of words that actually are phonetically pronounceable. They're actually about his character. And so Gideon, when he mentioned in this sermon, mentions 9 of God's names, which are right behind you right now. And if anybody wants me to email them, I can do that. And these names have been important to me. And at various times in my life, I need God to be one of these things. And there are other names that he gives himself as well, but these are really kind of helpful. And today, I find myself wanting to focus on the Shalom, Jehovah Shalom. Now that verse that says he knows my name, the Amplified Version translates it as follows. Because he knows and understands my name, brackets, has personal knowledge of my mercy, love, and kindness, trusts and relies on me, knowing I will never forsake him, no, never. Amplified Version went in hard. That's what it means to know God's name. It means to really know his character. And it's not just intellectual, it's here. And I'm really trying to learn to know him as the God of rest and God of peace. And I've become convinced that it's not so much freedom from storms as much as peace from storms as much as peace in the storm. Ingrid did a fantastic job a few weeks ago in the ISO chapel of talking about how in the middle of the night, in the middle of the storm, God showed up. And I really think that that's where you really get to measure peace. It's not when all is as it should be and the sun is shining down on me, blessed be your name. No, it's when things are crazy like Jeannie shared a few minutes ago. Well, can I experience peace then? That's a real valid test to see if God is really a God of peace. And I'm going to share with you two incidents in my Gordon experience. I've been here just a little bit more than a year, and I've had some amazing and wonderful and joyful experiences, and I've had some other experiences. And some of you say, oh boy, is he going to go there? And yeah, about a year ago, I found myself the involuntary center of controversy. I don't do controversy on purpose. I'm sorry. But for reasons that I had no control over, it happened. And the really cool thing is that the situation is not really important anymore because we're past that. Thank you, Lord. Appreciate that. But in the moment, it was really difficult. And I found myself in a position where I couldn't defend myself and where there's some misunderstandings and even some false things being said. And it was very difficult. And I had to really rely on God to get me through that. And this has never happened to me before. But in the week of that insanity, the Lord downloaded a file of Christ-likeness into my character that hadn't been there. And I was just empowered with a measure of grace, poise, wisdom, peace, forgiveness, and eloquence that was way above my spiritual pay grade. I'm really serious. I know me. I've been with me most of my life. I know who I am and what I'm like, and this was different. My pastor defines grace as the ability to do what God needs you to do, and I was given a level of grace that I've never known. And in the midst of that time, I experienced his shelter, his covering, his peace. Now, I experienced some of that from this community, and some of you reached out and supported me. I became a Facebook event. Who knew? And I'm grateful for that. But God, that was a time where I really felt God is my refuge, and he got me through that. But there was another time. And also, one more thing. Verse 3 mentions that he will keep you from the snare of the fowler. Basically, he'll keep you from missteps and getting trapped. And there are a lot of things I could have done wrong in that time, and I didn't do them. I can tell you right now, it's not because I was smart. It was because God was leading me, and I was smart enough to listen to him. That's all I can take credit for. He led me through that. But then, this August, I had another difficult experience. I was responsible for 3 different special events that the chapel office had some responsibility for, and Paulie can tell you, I am not very good at multitasking. I am very good at hyperfocus, which is great if I'm writing a score or writing a computer program. It's perfect. I will forget to breathe. But when it's a lot of different things happening, and they're all happening with different due dates, and they're all important, I'm not really good at that. That's a place that would be a developing skill on my report card. And so I had a bunch of balls, and a few balls fell. And they weren't really rubber balls, they were more like eggs. And great was the splattage thereof. And I remember one particular event, I had responsibilities before that I'd focused on, but I had responsibilities during, and I didn't prepare myself. And there's only 4 letters that can describe what it was. It was a massive fail. And Gordon College didn't lose its endowment, and it wasn't the most catastrophic thing in the world. But for me, it was very disappointing. And it was very hard for me to sort of pick myself up from that. There's kind of 2 kinds of failures, I think. There may be more, I don't know. There's ethical failures, there's moral failures, and this wasn't one of those. It wasn't that I just basically said to God, bump you, I'm going my own way. Those are hard, and you wonder, who took my ethical subroutine offline? How did that happen? And those are real failures that we've had, and maybe someday I'll share about those. But then there are logistical failures. It wasn't really on purpose, I just messed up, and I did. And it was very hard for me to really pick myself up from that, but I did. In that moment, I called on God and said, God, help me get through this. You know what, I gotta be honest, I didn't feel anything. I just knew he was there. And now in retrospect, I can see how that experience grew me and helped me and has helped me do a better job, and I'm grateful for it. I know he carried me through, even though it may not have emotionally registered. And one thing my pastor loves to say is, when you mess up, and by the way, how many people have ever messed up? Anybody? How many people have lied? Yeah. I want to guarantee you, if you just raised your hand, you will mess up again. I'm guaranteeing it to you. CTS already has a work order out for your next mess up. Date to be determined. We all will mess up. But when you mess up, Jesus is the best person to run to. The best person in the world. Don't do an Adam and hide when you mess up. Run. Run to his arms. And just know him as the one who can come and rescue you through that messed up. Now, I'd love to stop here, but I've got to talk a little bit about the fact that, first of all, pain. There's nothing in the Bible that I've been able to find that says we won't have pain. It's a promise that we will. And that's difficult. And I looked at verse 10, which said that no evil will come. And I was trying to figure out, what do you mean no evil is going to happen to me? That's just not true. And a bunch of theologians have tried to wrestle with it, but when I'm really desperate to try to understand something, I go to my first mentor, this guy here. That's my dad and me. Taken a couple of weeks ago. And Dad is one of the most theologically profound people I've ever met. So yesterday I visited him and said, Dad, I need some help. I'm having trouble with this verse. That's how he looks now. And he said, this is a very difficult passage, which made me feel better because if it's difficult for him, okay, maybe I'm not so stupid. And he shared that we came to 2 conclusions, and one thing is, I'm okay with verses that I don't quite get because I know God well enough. That trumps. So a couple things that trumped my confusion was, first of all, it's about trust. It's about knowing God well enough to know that even when the bad stuff happens, I can trust that it's something that he's got my best interest. It's kind of like my granddaughter when she gets a shot at the doctor's. She trusts her daddy enough to know that he would not make her do this if it wasn't good for her. That's trust. And she cries, and it's horrible, but she trusts him. And I want to be a guy who does that with God. That's how I want to be. And the second thing that Dad brought out is that we need to have an eternal perspective. Now, I know y'all young, and you're not thinking about heaven very much, and you shouldn't be in terms of being morbid about that. But the reality is that this thing that we're calling life is but a vapor. Dad is 94. He's in a nursing home. I don't know what his future is in terms of when he's going to go to his new house. And he's been thinking about heaven a lot. We were joking about logistics. Like, okay, in heaven there's 1 billion people. How do we not bump into each other? And if you want to see somebody, how do you make an appointment? And how do we see God? Do we take a number? And it made me start thinking, yeah, wow, that sign-in sheet's going to be deep. Are there chapel checkers in heaven? I mean, but for Dad, this is palpable. This is real. It's going down. And he's really thinking about it. And you know, at some level, folks, we all need to be there. That all this really hard stuff, and it's hard stuff, at one point is going to be nothing but a distant memory. And the last verse there says in verse 16, with long life I will reward him. And folks, those of us who love and trust Jesus, we are going to have a very long life, free of all these evils and problems. So, by now you've heard that I am fluent in a variety of musical styles. I have a degree in jazz piano, true. I can play my CCM, I can do Chris Tomlin and Hillsong. I love some gospel, And if you were here Saturday night, apparently I play hip-hop as well. Who knew? But when I was growing up, the thing that really touched my life and really was my heart language was the hymns. Those songs that were written hundreds of years ago, that multi-stanza rhyming, one note, one chord, deep theology, more theology than a Dan Darko lecture. And those things really touched my heart. So if you'll indulge me, I'll have you out of here by 10 after, okay? I'll really make sure that happens. But I'm going to sing for you. Is that okay? And when we're done, those of you who are visiting, please stay put. Okay. Be still, my soul, the Lord is on your side. Bear patiently the cross of grief or pain. Leave to thy God to order and provide. In every change he faithful will remain. Be still, my soul, thy best, thy heavenly friend, through thorny ways leads to a joyful end. Be still, my soul, thy God doth undertake to guard the future as he has the past. Your hope, your confidence, let nothing shake. All now mysterious shall be bright at last. Be still, my soul, the waves and winds still know his voice who ruled them while he dwelt below. Be still, my soul, the hour is hastening on when we shall be forever with the Lord. When disappointment, grief and fear are gone, sorrows forgot, love's purest joys restored. Be still, my soul, when change and fear is past. All safe and blessed, we shall meet at last. Be still, my soul, the Lord is on your side. Vaya con Dios, you're dismissed.